Hey there, friends, and welcome to the Define Success podcast. I'm your host, Bailey Guy. Join us as we empower you to turn your can'ts into cans and your aspirations into achievements. Hi, everyone. I'm Bailey Guy, and I'm super excited about my very first episode of the Define Success podcast. And I'm here with Adrian Kwan.
Who's over in Sydney, Australia, which is why he has this weird accent. Also, thank you for pronouncing my surname correctly. Most Americans that I've met like to say it as Kwan. You actually said it as Kwan. So I do appreciate that, Bailey. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited. It's actually 8:30 p.m. where I am right now, but I know it's a different time zone in Australia. But what time is it for you right now?
It's just going on 2 p.m. here. So,
And
I mean, are you
you're in
planning?
tomorrow too.
I'm on Tuesday. So I can tell you that we make it through to Tuesday, at least on this side of the world.
Okay, perfect. Because I'm still in Monday night.
Yep, we make it to Tuesday. So hooray.
Alrighty, so for our viewers who aren't familiar with you, which I'm sure a lot of them are, because you're getting very, very well known in the pageant industry for actually interviewing a lot of pageant girls. But I'll go ahead and introduce you. So Adrian Kwan is perhaps best known for his work in the pageant industry as the founder of the Pageant Project podcast. He has interviewed hundreds of pageant contestants from the biggest systems around the world. He's also coached national title holders from systems such as Miss Universe, World, Earth, International, and Grand, which is so incredible, worldwide over here. Adrian has been a successful business owner and coach for his entire life, previously being head tennis coach at a prestigious all girls school in Sydney, Australia, and now being a certified life coach through the internationally renowned Tony Robbins, one of my favorite people to listen to. He is now also an author, having published three top 10 best-selling books on Amazon, including Confessions of a Pageant Queen. And you can reach Adrian at info@thepageantproject.com.
That's the bio. Well
Yep,
done on getting through it.
that's
It's quite
certainly
long.
that's certainly a list of some really great accomplishments. So since you do have so many different industries that you cover, from podcasting, being an author, coach, all the things you have going on, what industry do you think you really focus on the most?
That's a really good question, and I guess I can't give you a simple answer. I recently had a conversation. I never ended up interviewing her, but a conversation with someone over here, a coaching session, for one of the biggest pageants here in Australia, and we ended up having a conversation for 5 hours. Right, for 5 hours. I think it's probably the longest conversation I've ever had online, and she struggles with ADHD very severely, and she's also a med student. And so she went through this whole process of trying to get a diagnosis, trying to figure out the medication. I don't know how much you know about ADHD, but if you go on the wrong medication, it's an absolute disaster. And basically, at about 1.5 hours, it became quite clear to her and probably to myself that I probably have ADHD as well. So I'm actually going through the process now of getting an official diagnosis, which means getting a referral from a doctor, going to see a psychiatrist. And the reason I bring that up is the ADHD thing makes it impossible to focus on one thing. I kind of wish that I could, because you talk about success, most people would tell you, and I agree with this to a certain extent. Most success comes from focusing on one thing and just doing that one thing, because then you get mastery over it, right? So whether it's pageantry, learning the violin, learning tennis, whatever it is, um, focusing on one thing. But that's so difficult for me to do, pretty much impossible, which is why when you read out that bio, I don't know who else you're interviewing, but they probably have, I'm not going to say a simpler bio, but you could probably start off by saying, okay, so you're in this industry, tell me about this industry. I have so much overlap, whether it's tennis, pageantry, interviewing, content creation. I would say I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, so the business owner part of it. I worked for someone once when I got out of university or college, and I lasted about a year before I had to give that away because it just was a spectacular fail. I'm not going to say I don't work well with other people, but what it was, it became very clear that I don't like jumping through other people's hoops or being held down by a very rigid hierarchy. I kind of like creativity and moving very quickly, and the field, the business I was in was not ready to do that. You know, it was like, oh, you work here for 10 years, then you gradually move your way up. It wasn't based on how good you are, how creative you are. So, I mean, the pageantry is probably what I'm best known for. Um, Having said that, I keep my options open. There are a lot of other things, particularly coming to the end of the year, that I'm keeping my eye on. And pageantry has led me to meet a lot of amazing people, such as yourself. I really enjoyed the conversation that we had, both on and off camera. We've gotten to know each other a little bit, but I haven't actually announced this publicly yet. But I don't know how many more interviews I'll be doing at this stage. So it's kind of like a setup and then a complete. I talked about pageantry, but pageantry, the industry takes you so far, and then I feel like it's up to each one of us to work out, okay, it's got me this far. Now I need to go into the real world, because there is a real world out there, as scary as it can be. And you know that better than anyone else after the year that you've had. Um, but you want to take the skills from pageantry and I think apply them somewhere else. Because I don't think you just want to be a professional pageant girl day in, day out. It's like, well, what are you going to do with the skills? So you probably would say to me, well, I've learned confidence. I've learned about public speaking. You're an author as well. Or you take all those skills and like, what do I want to do with them? And so I'm kind of turning that back on me and saying, okay, what do I want to do with them now? And now with that potential diagnosis and going down that path, which is a whole other journey, because for me to even say, to go, the possibility of going to see a psychiatrist is like, to me, it feels like you're kind of like a crazy person. I know that the stigma around it, but you have to kind of admit, okay, something is not quite right. Something is not the way that you wish it to be. And so you have to admit that you've failed, which I don't know about you, your listeners or your viewers, but for me, that's not a very comfortable thing to say because, probably high achievers, we don't like admitting when we've failed. And then going down that route is like, well, very fundamentally, there's something up here that's not quite working the way I would like it to. And then maybe going on medication, and there's a whole stigma with that. So I know you've had a very long year, and I'm not going to compare mine to yours at all, but it certainly feels weird sitting here at the end of this year with 12 days at time of recording to the end of the year and going, wow, next year is going to be 2024, which is scary. What do I want to do with it? And sometimes it's difficult to let go of the past and move on. It's very easy to say, let go of the past, leave it in the past, take the lessons and move on. But it's difficult, I think, sometimes to do what you know. I
Yeah.
think most people know what to do, but doing what you know is a completely different topic itself. So this is great. Have you noticed you only need to ask one question and I rant and ramble for 10
Oh,
minutes?
yeah,
This is going to be easy.
that was great. You hit on some really good points, especially the application of skills from one industry to the next. I think that's such a good point, and that's something that that's really one of the inspirations behind this podcast. Is really, a lot of my viewers, a lot of my audience are pageant contestants, just like
Mm,
yours. But there's so many skills that, as you said, that you can learn from pageants, or you can learn from being a college student, or you can learn from a big loss in your family like I had this year that you
mm,
referenced. And you can apply those lessons and experiences to other things in your life. And I think that that's such a good skill to have, is the ability to really apply a lesson, and even a lesson from somebody else too. Sometimes me and
absolutely.
my mom talk about that. Is she's like, that's one of your really good assets, is that you can actually look at other people's
Mm,
successes and failures and apply those lessons to your own journey. And so that's another reason for the podcast, is to really learn about those from different people in various industries, and hopefully
mm.
my viewers can do the same and apply these lessons and different experiences to their own journey.
Oh, yeah, I think, I mean, everyone has their own journey to
Mhm.
go through. And sometimes you just need to start. But I will say one of the conversations that often comes up with not just pageant girls, but human beings in general, if they hear me, well, hear you say, oh, you should believe in yourself, go and start something. What is it that you're good at? Do you know how many people get stuck at that? It's like, tell me what you're good at. And they, oh, I'm good at nothing. Like, what skills do you have? Oh, I'm good at nothing. And sometimes it really takes someone to believe in you, or maybe even it's more just an outside perspective to say, well, hey, you're really good at this. You're really good at that. Because you know what I mean? Like blind spots are called blind spots for a reason because you can't see them. And if you are like most people and you have a very, let's say, evolved inner critic, right? You're always harsh on yourself. You're your worst inner critic. It can be really hard to, if you want to start anything, whether it's a podcast or whatever industry, and you can think, oh, I'm not good enough. It's too difficult. I'm not creative enough. Who's going to want to listen to my annoying voice, etc. And you get all these weird and wonderful, like really you not useful at all feedback in your head. And sometimes it just takes someone to say, you know what, you're really good at this. Or even if you're not good at it now, what could you be good at with a little bit of practice? Because I mean, as I told you in the bio, like I've done hundreds, like literally hundreds, it boggles my mind, hundreds of interviews with pageant contestants from around the world. Obviously, a lot in America, but then the UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, Mauritius, like Norway, Denmark. You name a country, I probably interviewed someone from that country. But I looked back. I forced myself to look back at the very first interview I did about a year ago. Like I didn't do my first interview a year ago, but a year ago, I just went, you know what? People talk about keep your first episode up. Some people like to take it down because they think it's embarrassing. But someone else that I respect said, no, you should keep it up because then you can look back at it. So maybe one day you'll look back at this
Mhm.
and then you can see how far you've come, which I thought was really, really interesting. And I looked back at my first interview. Oh, it so bad, so embarrassing, so cringeworthy. I had no idea what pageantry was. I didn't know pageant girls couldn't swear. I, I didn't I didn't know anything. And I look at and I took a photo with her afterwards, and I didn't know how to. I was so uncomfortable in front of the camera. I still am, but I was stood there like some sort of like a toy soldier. She had her arm around me, and I was just stood there in a blue. Not even that. I had my arms by my side like a soldier, and I look back and I go, "Oh my god, that's so embarrassing." But you know, after hundreds of episodes, hundreds of podcasts, talking to amazing women from around the world, eventually you get better at it.
Mhm.
And I think maybe that's the biggest point, isn't it? Like you'll get better at it. Maybe you'll
Yeah.
never be the best. Who knows? But that's really intimidating. Like, oh, what are you best at in the world? Maybe that's too big a question. Like, well, what could you get better at with practice? And maybe it's podcasting, maybe it's pageantry, maybe it's baking, maybe it's writing a book, something that you and I have both done. I never set out to do that. I never thought a book was in my future. Um, and yeah, so just start small. If you're going to ask me what the secret to success is, and by the way, I don't hold myself up as, successful. There's so many things that I'm still struggling with, really. So I'm almost uncomfortable when anyone holds me up and says, "Oh, you're successful. Tell me what the key to success is." I'm like, "Go ask Elon Musk or someone like, because he's obviously very successful." But you won't get anywhere unless you start.
Mhm.
And you also, and I know that sounds so obvious, but you got to start just like you hit the record button. Like you can tell people how long it took you to even just hit the record button, giggling for like 5 minutes before you hit the record button. But that's what I mean. Like it's that difficult, like your first time just to start. And then I would say also, then don't look for perfection, just look for progress. It's progress over perfection. Okay, so my first ever interview was horrible. My second one was already a lot better. And then, 40, 80, 100 episodes in, I felt, I remember my 100th episode because I had a big song and dance about it at the time. And I interviewed someone who I really looked up to. Um, and I thought, oh, I was so much more comfortable then. But yeah, find someone who believes in you if you're lucky enough. If you don't have that person, look for role models. I mean, pageant industry is a great place to start. And then just get started and look for progress rather than perfection. And then you can look back, hopefully, in a years from now, end of 2024, and go, I'm so glad I started XYZ. And like me, you can look back and see how far you've come. And by the way, and again, I know you'll know this, where you end up may not be anywhere where you thought you'd be,
Mhm.
because God likes to, throw things at us. We like to call them challenges. Sometimes they feel a lot more than that. And sometimes you feel like saying, at least I feel like saying, like, I get the whole challenge thing, but could I get a break? Could I could I check out for, a month or so? But life doesn't work like that. So, really finding someone who believes in you, will hold your hand the whole way, and when you're not feeling so great, and pageantry again, it's like, you see the Instagram photo,
Mhm.
you don't see the prep that went into it, or you see the flawless walk down the runway. You don't see the blisters, the multiple falls, the torn dresses, the tantrums, the tears. I mean, I'm sure that you've never done any of this, Bailey, but for most other people, it it's such a process to get there, and all we see is the finished product. And then we go, oh my God, I could never be that person. I could never be like her. But you didn't see the journey it took to get there. And I know from speaking to you that, you didn't start off this way. And I know very much you're not a finished product, but you didn't start this way. You started somewhere really, really different. And I know journaling for you was a huge thing. So I would say find whatever works, journaling, prayer, meditation, whatever works. But yeah, just get started. Find someone who believes in you. That really is important. I mean, faith in God can also really help with that if you don't have that luxury of someone believing in you, because we don't all have that. We don't all have the luxury of a supportive family. And then just really progress over perfection, even if you're 1% better than you were yesterday. If you do that every day for the year, you're not even going to end up 365% better because it compounds, but you're going to end up miles ahead of all those people sitting at home on their butts criticizing you, right? Like, oh, who do you think you are to start a podcast? Who do you think you are to enter a pageant? Well, those people aren't going to get anywhere. And a year from now, they'll still be sitting on their butt, and they'll be a year older, having wasted a year. And even if you fail forwards. That's what someone told me. You fail forwards or you fail fast, because that's the only way you learn. So you actually want to fail really quickly, because then you can get the lessons really quickly, if you're impatient like me. Uh, so I think you've only asked two questions, and I'm talking for like half an hour. Sorry,
What
I'll
you
let
what
you
you said
continue.
actually, it reminded me of a quote that I saw one time, and I'm not going to quote it exactly because I don't remember it exactly, but it essentially said, "Your first post will fail. Your first speech, no one will show up for. Your first, podcast will be a
Mm,
flop." And but you have to do that first one in order to get to the successful one, and in order to make any progress. And so I think that that is such a good point to hone in on. Is, I mean, even for me, like, the people who are viewing this and listening, they didn't see what was happening right before this podcast started, but seriously, I was like playing around with the record button, trying to get the confidence to click it for, I'm serious, like 5 minutes. And Adrian can tell you, I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm nervous. It's scary to do something for the first time, but let this podcast be your sign that you can, if you do it one time, if you just do it the first time, then every time after that
yeah.
will be easier.
I think it's really important for your viewers to know, especially on the first episode. It's probably going to be people who know you quite well. Also, some people who maybe know you from your social, but don't know you in person. And especially in America, there's a tendency to look up at pageant girls as they're perfect, because that's kind of what you see. But I think one of the things I really appreciate about you is that you're very open in terms of being a work in progress,
Mhm.
and you always will be. Everyone will be, and you're either growing or dying. So probably growing is a better option. But someone who's achieved what you've achieved, right? In pageantry, authoring a book. I know you're very active in your sorority, and you're on a position on the executive board. Someone who would look at that and go, "Oh, she couldn't possibly be nervous about anything. It's easy for her. She's confident." Well, you don't see what goes on behind the scenes, right? And that's the real issue. People think to be confident, you need to be super to be successful, you need to be super confident, you need to be super this, super that. It's like, you didn't see the 99% of the journey that it took to get there. You just saw the finished product, and you're comparing your day one to someone's, in my case, like episode 300 and something. That's not
Yeah.
a fair comparison, like at any level. And also, your journey and my journey, there's no reason they should be the same. Even if we go down the same path, we have different qualities, different gifts, different foibles. So we're going to have radically different journeys. So, as much as I like social media for reaching out to people and meeting people all around the world, it's very dangerous as well. Like you really need to, stand guard at the at the door to your mind, your brain, your soul. Because if you start comparing yourself to other people, that's a really good way of not starting anything.
Yeah.
Because if you look at someone like who's done a sport or someone who's done anything, you go, oh, to be successful, I need to be like them. That's not
Mhm.
that's not even a vaguely fair comparison for you to do to yourself. So, you hit that record button. It took you a while, but you got there. But
Yeah.
my
And
point
here we
is,
are.
you've already achieved a lot. There'll be people out there watching this who go, Bailey, this is easy for her. Well, actually, maybe not, but
Mhm.
maybe you did it anyway.
Yeah, do it
So,
anyway.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, like I like have definitely looked at your podcast and it's so successful and incredible and you're such a great interviewer and just I mean, I love listening to your podcast and sometimes I think I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like how is my podcast ever going to reach that level that you've reached and be as great as yours is?" But if I didn't hit the record button, however long ago this podcast started, then there would never be an answer to that question because it wouldn't be. You're
exactly.
automatically not going to get there if you never just hit the record button.
Well, exactly. But I also don't want you to compare yourself to mine at all. And as I said, I don't think of myself as successful. I really don't. So when you say, okay, I look at your podcast or whatever, and you see maybe some of the people I've had on, or you see maybe the fact that I seem to speak without hesitating or just being able to ramble, as you've seen, for like 10 or 15 minutes without a script. I don't want you to be me. I don't want anyone watching this to be you. I think the great journey for all of us is that self discovery journey and finding out what we're put on earth to do. Now, whether you believe that or not, whether we're predestined for something, we've all got innate gifts,
Yeah.
right? And the worst thing you can do with those gifts is not use them. Because I kind of feel like that's a slap in the face of your creator. Again, whatever you believe in, I'm respectful of. But you've got certain gifts, use them, and then be the best version of yourself. I don't want, and this comes up in tennis, for example, they will ask a young girl or a young guy, like, oh, do you want to be the next Roger Federer, to take an example? And very often the temptation is to say, yes, I want to be the next Roger Federer, the next LeBron James, the next Michael Jordan, whatever, the next Taylor Swift. But then you have a few people say, no, I want to be the first me. And that's actually really, really important. I mean, of course, you can idolize people and you can ask yourself, okay, what what made them work? What helped to make them successful, which is what you're doing with the podcast.
Yeah.
But don't confuse that with being that person because
Mhm.
you're not supposed to be them. If you were put on earth to be the exact carbon copy of someone else, that'd be a waste. So I love what you're doing in terms of getting, like certain keys or certain like signposts on the highway to success,
Mhm.
but don't be someone else because I think that would really be a waste. And not pageantry. Talk about pageantry for a second. That's a huge issue, right? So
Yeah.
many people go in thinking, oh, I need to be a certain way. So and so wore a blue gown, so I'm going to wear a blue gown. Or, a brunette won last year, so I'm going to dye my hair brown. Or a brunette won last year, so this year they'll pick a blonde. And I spent so much time with pageant girls unraveling the mess inside their head and going, what are you talking about? This is
Yeah.
nonsense. Be you.
Mhm.
And it's always a journey. It's like they start thinking they need to be one way, and eventually you watch them because I can look from an outside point of view and you can see that at some point, every single one of you who's stuck with pageantry long enough has realized, you know what? I can be myself. I can be proud of myself. Not from a position of pride, but just proud of what I've achieved. proud of what I've overcome, and maybe even I can actually love myself. And that's a huge journey because you talk about success, but how do you define success? Is it the money in the bank? Is it having successful relationship, friendship? I mean, it's a whole, you could ask everyone you interview what their definition of success is. And I think that's a huge thing. But I think for me, money is cool. Like, okay, you don't want to say, oh, I don't love money. I was like, well, you have none. Good luck being happy. But having a certain amount of financial success, I think, is important, at least in the world that we live in. But there's a lot of other things I think that go into being happy.
Mhm.
People, particularly for people, feeling like I'm growing and having experiences. Like, if you have to work 18 hours a day, and there are some people who do that, full respect, but you don't have time to spend with your loved ones or doing anything other than your work. I kind of feel maybe you're missing out on some of the joy in life. And I think that's a shame. If you love your work, I guess it's different. But I think success is, I mean, I know that because of me, you follow Tony Robbins as well. Or no, I think you were on him before. But he has a really cool saying, which is like, success without fulfillment is failure, is the ultimate failure. As in, like, financial success without feeling like you're fulfilled in life, not happy, because that can up and down every today I'm happy, tomorrow I'm unhappy because of whatever happens. But success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. So I think if you're going to ask me to define success, I would say obviously there's a business side of it, the financial side of it. That's kind of easy to define. But what actually fulfills you? You know, what, how do you feel you're growing in life? What do you feel like you're giving back in life? Because it's not just about you, it's about the people that you're helping. And again, pageantry is really cool for that because you guys help out some really good organizations, or you help out, your little sisters, even sorority. I know that, you have your littles and your bigs and all this stuff that I don't understand, people hiding in boxes and I'm surprised, but you're giving back to people, right? And I think at the end of the day, if you've made a bunch of money, but no one remembers you because you're a miserable so and so, I don't think that's success. I think if you interview people who genuinely think they're successful, they will also be fulfilled.
Yeah.
That's a guess. Not happy every day. Don't get me wrong, but they feel like they wake up and it's like, yeah, I know what I want to do with my life. I have some kind of vision. And if not, they're working towards it. They're
Yeah,
seeking
they
it
find
out.
joy in what they do.
You have to.
Mhm.
Otherwise, what's the point? I don't want to put it that way, but you gotta find what gets you going, what interests you. I love having conversations with people. That's why I started interviewing. I promise you, I didn't go to college or university and say what. And when people ask me what do you want to be when you grow up, I never said pageant interviewer. Okay, I just I didn't, I didn't even know what pageantry was until probably 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Never heard of it. I mean, I'd seen Miss Congeniality, but that was about it. But if you start, you have to start. I think that's the main thing of what I'm saying. But also let go to a certain extent because you don't really know where you're going to end up. Because
Yeah.
I'm sure if I ask you 5 years ago, where do you think you're going to be on the 18th of December 2023? I bet you some parts, maybe, but a lot of stuff, good and bad, is not, you never would have thought of it.
Yeah.
So you just have to let go of that control.
Yeah. And I like the point that you hit on there with comparison because I think comparison is one of the things that 99.9% of pageant girls can all agree on that it's an
Mm,
experience we've had. And it was funny you giving your kind of response to me talking about my comparison to your podcast. But if someone were to tell me that they were comparing themselves to something I was doing, or maybe they started a podcast and was comparing it to mine, I would have given
yeah,
the exact same response that you gave, and
exactly.
said like, well, don't compare yourself to me. Like, everybody's a work in progress. I mean, I'm still like, I haven't, I have not reached, my end destination either. And so I think that was a really great point as well. You make so many good points. You're so good at this.
Just because I, I recycle stuff that I've heard and picked up from everywhere else. I can't remember who said it, or maybe it was even in the Bible. I don't know. You can tell me. But someone said comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Hmm.
And just let that sink in and go, okay, what's one thing you want to be in life? Happy. Most people will say it is happy. I think they mean more close, it's closer to joy or fulfillment or finding your purpose. And comparison is the thief of that. Okay, so maybe we shouldn't do the comparison. And again, it's not knowing what to do, it's doing what you know, right? So even as you said, if someone came to you and said, "Oh, I'm comparing myself to your podcast, Bailey," you said, "Don't do that. You know, find your own path." You know that, but you were still doing it yourself. And
Yeah.
I'd say that without judgment because I do exactly the same thing. But what I would say, if comparison is the thief of joy, and you're thinking about going into pageantry, you need to, I'm not going to say be careful, but be mindful
Yeah.
because social media is programmed to make you compare yourself to other people. And whenever you do that long enough, you can start feeling like you're too old, you're too young, you're too fat, you're too thin, you're too short, you're too tall. Whatever it is, it rarely fills you with good feelings. And I say that as someone who spent so much time on social media, that it's like really watch what you're feeding your mind. And
Yeah.
if it's not working for you, then stop. You know, they're all, you can remove Instagram or TikTok from your phone for like a week. Spend a bit less time on the computer, spend a bit more time with real people rather than this imaginary person on the other side of the world. Talk to the best friend that you haven't caught up with for 2 months, three
Mhm.
months. And I think it's in those little moments that we can find a little bit more joy and hopefully a little less comparison.
Yeah, one of my favorite Bible verses is guard your heart, for everything else you do flows from it. And I think that can apply to your heart and your mind and just kind of your soul and spirit as a whole. You
Mm,
have to guard yourself. You have to guard what you let into your heart and into your mind and into your space and into your thoughts. Um, and because your thoughts will become actions and words, and they
yeah.
they become reality. And so when you're allowing yourself to scroll on Instagram endlessly and look at, for example, like I never will like look at whoever I'm competing with. I won't say never because I mean
Mm,
it happens. I have friends that I compete with, so
yeah.
sometimes I got to, but but I really try hard not to. I really try to avoid it, and even hitting the mute button. I'm not going to unfollow,
Mm,
but I will hit the mute button. And so just to guard my mind, if there's somebody that I particularly just do not, it doesn't feed me healthy thoughts and
yeah.
healthy feelings by looking at their content, then you got to guard yourself from it. You have
It's
to be
it's
a
really
gatekeeper
again
for your own mind.
it's a simple piece of advice, but it's only as good as you actually apply it, right? So I think that's what it was so weird for me doing pageant coaching because for me it was always life coaching.
Yeah.
It was life coaching for pageant girls, and I kind of think that if you've got a happy life, you're fulfilled in life, you're going to probably put in a better performance at a pageant. If you're miserable in life or you're trying to run away from real life and you're doing a pageant to hide it, tends not to go so well. But I mean, even me saying that, anyone listening it would go, "Yeah, that's so obvious, Adrian," and it is. But that doesn't mean that everybody does it, right? Again, it's not knowing what to do; it's doing what you know. Like if any of your listeners or viewers wanted the secret to success at pageantry, and of course you go and look on YouTube and you can, interview tips and walking tips and styling advice. I'm not saying don't get advice, but at the end of the day, I think most people can probably come up with their own advice. It's like, okay, well, I should go in, I should I should work hard, right? I should work hard. I should be honest. And if I from doing those two things, I can probably be confident in myself. And every day I'm going to do a little bit of work towards it. I'm going to build my advocacy. What do I stand for? And probably, well, how do I do that? Well, I need to start, reading, watching other. Every time I had a pageant coaching session, I felt like saying, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You already know this, but I'm just here to tell it to you again, because maybe if you hear it from me, maybe it will cut through a little bit more. I never gave anyone like life altering advice, something that they had never thought of before. And so I really, really hope that, through what you're doing, some other people can get their journey started. And I'd be really excited to see, what sort of industries, what sort of fields they make a start in. And, I'm always contactable on social or email if people want advice. But again, I think, and I don't know if you agree with this or whether it's even accurate, but I feel like most people don't need more advice. What they actually need is more belief. That they need or more faith. And I will say, having read the Bible from beginning to end, not in 2022, but the previous in 2022. God, I'm losing track of the year here. But that for me, as someone who never thought I'd do that, that was really helpful for me because sometimes when you feel like there's no one who believes in you or everything's going wrong, you need something to carry you through. And sometimes you just feel like what's happening, it's too much. Like, I can't deal with this. Well, then you need to believe in something that's bigger than yourself. And I find that people who don't have a faith or belief in whatever it is they believe, again, I'm respectful of, but unless you have that belief in something bigger than yourself and that fundamental belief that, you know what, things might suck right now, but eventually they're going to work out for the best. Even if that's not true, you have to believe that
Mhm.
because otherwise, what's the alternative? And again, I think it's hard to believe that if it's just you against the world. So having, reading the Bible, I mean, the Old Testament was pretty wrath of God stuff, literally. But the New Testament, in particularly for me, Proverbs, um, and
I,
to some extent the Psalms as well,
mhm.
it was just so cool to read that and go, you know what? Whenever the Bible was written, they had the same problems. Some of us, they didn't have social media, obviously, but they had some of the same problems that we do right now, right? Feeling not good enough, worshipping false idols. That was a huge one. Again, I will put fame up there, social media. People start worshipping fame, worshipping likes. I'm like, maybe take a break here and find something bigger than yourself. And I don't want to get too religious because I know that will turn some people off. But as someone who really never looked at the Bible and was made to go to church every Sunday and really resented it, circling back to it voluntarily and just going, you know what, I've thought about reading this book from beginning to end because I'm looking for wisdom. And this Bible thing, it's kind of been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some wisdom in it, right? Rather than just judging it, going, oh, it's not for me. It's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a reason for it. And you know what? Even if you read it and you hate it, at least you read it.
Hmm.
But there's so much wisdom in there, even in today's age. That's something that I found really helpful last year. Because yeah, life gets too much sometimes, and you need a support network. And again, not everyone has the luxury of that. So having like a virtual support network or a lifeline to the big fella up above,
Yeah.
that can really help, I think.
Yeah, that's funny that you. I remember you mentioning that you had read the entire Bible um, from cover to cover, and
Mm.
I'm currently working on that. I'm in Deuteronomy right now, but I've read most of the. I've read all the New Testament, and I've read most of the Old Testament. But that's like throughout my entire lifetime. That's like my life stats. But so I've really been trying to focus on reading it from cover to cover, and it makes so much more sense when you do it that way. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
you can see how everything built on each other.
yeah, there's kind of a timeline that you see that you don't. I know a lot of people skip the New Testament, and I really didn't want to do that because I felt, well, it's the Bible, it's written in a certain order for a certain reason. I
Mhm.
mean, yes, it's a collection of stories, but I really wanted to, and I didn't go completely cover to cover. I followed a reading plan
Yeah.
because some of the Bible is out of chronological order, and some
Mhm.
of it's like mentioned 3 or 4 times. Like in the New Testament, I can't remember which parable it was, but it tells a story about Jesus, and it's told from like 3 or 4 different viewpoints, and
Mhm.
they're all slightly different. So then that can get really confusing unless you have a reading plan, because it's like, I thought I read about this before, and now it's happening again, and now it's happening again, and now so you kind of feel like, hey, am I missing something? You're not. Follow a reading plan; it'll make sense. But I mean, look, my point to that is, I think especially in today's age, where I feel like it can get very crazy, very hectic, very out of control, very out of touch, and I really think that's only going to get worse because technology is not going to slow down. social media is not going to slow down. We have artificial intelligence now, that's not going to slow down. And they're all useful tools. But again, your success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. You need to find something deeper and more meaningful to latch on to when your journey to success takes a massive detour off a cliff.
Yeah.
Because it will do that, by the way.
Mhm.
Like, people say, the pathway to success is not a straight line. And, it's got all these detours and it looks like a huge mess. I think it's even more simplistic than that, Bailey. I think the stepping stones to success are literally your failures. Like you need, as I said, fail fast. You need to fail before you can get to what everyone is looking for success, whether it's in pageantry, whether it's in business. If you're not failing, and I use that term loosely in inverted commas, if you're not failing, you're not learning. And if
Mhm.
you're not learning, you're not growing. So you're not really successful. You're just lucking out. Like anyone can go into a pageant, and we all heard the stories. They go on there once and they win on their first try. That doesn't necessarily qualify you, to, for example, to be a pageant coach or to tell someone that you have this secret to, I can hit a tennis ball once and it goes over the net. That doesn't mean like I'm a world-class tennis player. Everyone can luck out. It's, I think it's only in your darkest moments, and I literally like darkest moments, not a tough day, but it's in those darkest moments where you learn the most about yourself.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you've been there. And then those are the lessons that you need to take forwards to sort of equip yourself to be, the sword and shield, so to speak, because you know it's going to happen again. You
Mhm.
know a challenge is going to happen again, which is why I sometimes struggle with self-help, because it says, think of the positive, everything's going to work out all right. You know that's not the case. Bad things happen to good people. Sometimes. I don't want to be doom and gloom, but for you to just go forwards and go, everything will be great if I just, put it out there. How are you going to deal with it when life punches you in the face?
Yeah.
So, taking the lessons, not ignoring the difficult times, the dark times, the really soul crushing times, the times when you maybe question your faith. Taking the lessons from that is really, really huge to
Mhm.
moving forwards. Because, given some of the things that you've been through, I know I've been through, does a troll comment on social media mean so much to me? It's annoying, but all that other stuff I've been through helps put that in perspective. And as you move forwards, you're going to become stronger, more confident. You're going to believe in yourself more. And at that point, all I would say is, okay, look back, give back, help other people up.
Mhm.
Because I think the other thing we can agree on is no one gets to success on their own.
Mhm.
Everyone has someone or something that has helped them. Often a parent, parents, best friend, partner, whatever it is. You never get there by yourself. So please, when you get to success, however you define it, don't turn your back on everyone who helped you get there. Because I've had that experience on the flip, where people are your best friend until they get to a certain point, and then they don't talk to you anymore, and it's like, huh, well. And then, I don't want to make them out to be a bad person. I think like, well, what can I learn from this? And sometimes it's difficult lessons. Life can be super difficult sometimes. I know that doesn't
Absolutely.
sound super positive, but
Yeah.
that's my reality anyway.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, having lost my dad to cancer just over 3 months ago now, and it was very sudden. He was diagnosed and then 19 days later passed away from pancreatic cancer. And so that was very, and I mean, like, I'm an only child. I'm extremely close with both of my parents. This was our house, and so I still lived at home, and so I was very, very, very close with him, and it was so sudden, and he has so much of who I am is because of him, and
Mm,
so that was definitely a curveball I never saw coming. But I really have, like you said, it's really those moments where life just hits you in the face that cause you to learn and grow the most. And that's definitely what's happened to me over the past 3 months. I've learned so many things. I mean, even the silly things, like I learned how to pump gas in my car, which is really silly. but he did that for me. Like he always would pump my own gas because he was worried about my safety in at like gas stations. I think that was the reason. I really am not sure, but
Right.
he always pumped mine and my mom's gas every single time. And he had done it for her forever. So when I got my first car, just naturally he did it for me too. And so while he was in the hospital, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm low on gas. What am I gonna do? I had to learn, I had to figure it out. And that's such a silly example, but it goes bigger than that. There's, I've learned to cook because he was the cook of the house.
Yeah.
And so I've had to, there were several times when now me and my mom are, cooking together, but sometimes when she hasn't been able to, she's, had something going on and I've had to be on my own with that. And so I
Yeah.
definitely have learned so much just life skills. And I feel like I think I've grown up more in the past 3 months
Oh,
than probably some entire years of my lifetime. And
I'm sure.
it goes, even deeper than the things that I just listed, as far as like emotional strength and mental strength. And,
Mm,
up on the holidays, we're a week away from Christmas now at the time of this recording. And, I
yeah.
never thought 6 months ago or even 4 months ago that, that we wouldn't have them this Christmas. And
Yeah.
that's really hard. And even, there's a Father's Day card that I wrote for him this year in June that's he put up on the fridge, and he never took it down, and we haven't taken it down yet. And I see that Father's Day card every day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like time is passing, and I would have had no idea that that was my last Father's Day with him.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so the hard times really do make you grow, because I feel like every conversation, every relationship that I have really that I've had since that time, I've been a lot more intentional about. And
Yeah.
that's even like a thing that I've learned since his passing, is even with my sorority sisters, when they're going through a problem or they have something going on, I'm so much more intentional about the relationship and about listening to them and helping them through
Mm,
it, and being there for them, because you never know when it's going to be the last time. So there's so many different lessons that I have that I've learned from that experience. But yeah,
yeah.
really, and not that that was a failure on my part in any way, but that's a loss. And I think loss and failure
Yeah.
can feel the same. And so yeah, you're definitely right about that. It's you don't learn by winning everything. You're not going to
No.
learn a whole lot from the wins in your life. I mean, you certainly will, but it's the things that are hard. It's the challenges, and it's the things when times when things didn't go the way that you expected. That's when you really
Mm,
grow and learn. And those are things that prepare you for your future the most, and for every experience after that.
yeah. I think again, I think it was Tony Robbins said this at a seminar somewhere. For those of you wondering, I was certified under him. That's why I keep talking about him.
We love Tony
But
Robbins on here.
but I remember him saying that, life always has problems, and that's very cliche. But success, to come back to, the theme of success, he said success is not the absence of problems, it's having better quality problems, right? That's a really, really big one. Success doesn't mean you've got no problems. It means the problems you have are better quality problems. So for example, you starting a podcast, right? That's and at the beginning you're like, okay, what gear do I need? What camera do I need? What microphone do I need? Those are certain sort of problems, right? But then by episode 100, episode 200, it's like, I have so many people wanting me to interview them and I don't know which one to pick. And you can get really frustrated, but it's like, hang on. Do you remember back in episode 1 when no one would jump on the podcast with you? You would have given anything to be having the problems you have right now. And it's like, oh, you know what? You're probably right. But then to even take that a step further, your problem as to how do I start a podcast, what mic do I get, or anything like that, for anyone watching, I'm not picking on you. But compared to someone in a third world country who
Mhm.
doesn't know where they're going to get water from, forget food, running water. They don't know whether they're going to get bombed out of existence, whether they're going to be trafficked around the world. Sometimes we get so attached to our problems that we forget they're not actually that big. And I don't, at the same hand, I don't want to dismiss it, because when you say you've got a certain problem, like let's say one of your sorority sisters comes to you, and they have a problem that from your experience, your perspective, it's super simple to handle. So you go, oh, that's not a problem. But remember, for them back then, at that point in their journey, it is a big problem. That's like the least helpful thing you can tell someone is it's not a problem. It is a problem. So if you're going, if you're in Miss Universe, let's say you won whatever one, and you're about to go on stage, yes, there are certain problems like how am I going to do my walk? How am I going to do my talent? Okay, but those are better quality problems than at the beginning when you couldn't walk in heels
Yeah.
without falling flat on your face,
Yeah.
right? And that's probably, again, a lot better problem than before you started pageantry, where you were shy, couldn't talk to anyone, had no idea to do makeup, hair, etc., etc., etc. And I'm not casting judgment on that, but people, I think, sometimes want success because they think, oh, that person's successful. They'll never have any problems.
Yeah.
No, they got problems.
Hmm.
Anyone has got problems. I
Yeah.
guarantee you. They may not talk about it all the time, but everyone's got problems. So maybe a year from now, the goal can simply be, no, I'm not going to be successful in a year. I just want to have better quality problems. Right? Maybe that's
Yeah.
a lower bar to set. Rather than being, I'm going to have $100 million, maybe it's just, I want to be thinking about where can I spend my money at this store versus having to shop at the thrift store,
Hmm.
right? Or whatever is an improvement for you. Because again, whatever it takes to get you started, I'm here for it. So please don't think that anyone who's successful has no problems.
Yeah.
Because, again, you look at someone who like Jeff Bezos founded Amazon, Elon Musk, right? And you go, oh, those guys have so much money, they have no problems. If you're running a company that big,
Hmm.
your entire life now is a problem.
Yeah.
Which is also, by the way, why I'm clear now. Again, self-awareness. I'm clear now that I don't want to have a company like that because I know what problems it comes with. There's nothing gift without something you need to pay. And I really would love to spend my life meeting people, going around having experiences. I wouldn't really be able to do that if I wanted to make $100 million company. And I say that having read the biographies of people who've made it successful, and they are workaholics. They love that. Me, I need the people. I'm not happy to be locked in somewhere in board meetings a whole day. I would go stir fry crazy. So that's a self awareness journey. But, you know, you've had problems this year. Hopefully next year you'll have problems, but they'll be better quality problems,
Hmm.
right? And I think that's a really cool way of looking at success. It's not the absence of problems, maybe just having better quality problems, right? That'd
Yeah.
be nice.
And don't let those problems stop you from starting, because like even the person that you look up to has problems. So if you're, if you're looking up, if you're wanting to compete at a pageant and the current title holder, you're like, oh, well, I probably will never get to that point because I have all these problems. Well, that person probably also had those same problems and also currently
Yeah,
have other problems that you don't even know about.
yeah,
But that they're handling, and that if you get to the point that they're at, you'll also have those problems most likely. And so yeah, the problems never go away, they just shift. And
no,
that's something that kind of makes life fun, though. It's a nice little challenge, because if life was easy and if everything was easy, then like, can you imagine that? That would be so boring. I mean, the adrenaline rush I got when I hit the record button for the podcast.
yeah.
Live for that adrenaline rush. And so yeah, that's so smart, and never let those problems stand in the way. Um, but as we were sort of wrapping up this incredible podcast, and I thank you so much, I actually was going to ask you to define success, but you've already done it. If you'd like to add on to anything that you said, or further elaborate on that question, if there's anything that I haven't asked you and you'd like to talk about, I'd love to give you the opportunity to do that.
I, I really think, as I said, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure.
Mhm.
So success is easy in a certain to a certain extent. Like if you do the same steps as someone else, you'll probably get to the same point success wise. Like starting a company, there are certain things you need to do, and then marketing, you need to do a certain. But fulfillment is an art. Success is a science. Fulfillment is an art. you need to find out what floats your boat, because I guarantee you that's what's going to get you through the hard times. If you lose a loved one, if you go through a breakup, a divorce, whatever it is, I guarantee you having money in the bank account won't solve that problem. It can make some of it easier, right? But the thing that's really going to get you through is holding on, at least for me, again, it's people. It's finding people who know you, get you, love you, no matter what. And, the people who've seen you at your worst. And, with pageant girls, it's, tears, tantrums, mascara running, their hair's all over the place, the dress is too small, it's too big, the shoes don't fit, and your pageant is tomorrow and you're freaking out. Someone who can love you and support you, even when you've gone full stir fry pageant crazy, that's the person who's going to save you in those darkest times. So I would say just get stuck, like take a self inventory if you want to get technical about it. Self awareness is a good thing. It's helpful to have someone who can give you an outside perspective, a friend, a coach, but then get started. But I would be very quick to find the people who are going to support you. And the scary thing with that is, the really scary thing is, some of the people you thought would be there to support you will not be. And flip side, some of the people you never thought would be supportive will actually come out of the woodwork and be the most supportive people you've ever met.
Mm-hmm.
Those are your people, right? And you just have to let go of the past. And I think final point, when you do become successful, people are going to judge you more. So if you want a life that doesn't have judgment, don't try to become successful. Because the more successful you become, the more people are going to take shots at you. Because people are resentful very often of other people's success because they don't see the hard work, to go back to what we're talking about before. So if you really want to be successful, you got to be bulletproof against rejection. And I understand that's a process, but you cannot be afraid of rejection or judgment, because you're going to get more of that the more successful you become. So I
Yeah.
hope that answers the question. I know that's a lot.
Absolutely, that was so great. I think the biggest takeaway that I got was don't wait until you're ready, just start.
Yeah.
And don't let the problems, don't let the challenges stand in your way of just starting. Because there's a Bible verse that says, don't worry about the things. Don't worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow will have its own challenges. Worry about
Yeah.
now. And I think that is so important too, because you'll drive yourself crazy if you think about, oh well, once I have $1 million, what am I gonna do? Like what how will I pay taxes? Like all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like worry about today, and actually don't worry about it, but like focus on today and focus on the step right ahead of you. Focus on hitting the start button or the repeat button in my case, and just live in today, and the worries of tomorrow will come and you'll be able to handle them better because you will have handled the worries of today.
Who was it that said, a brave man, a hero dies one death, a coward dies 1,000 deaths?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's exactly what you just said, right? Because a hero, when there is a challenge too big, he's dead. It's like, well, I'll figure that out when I get there. But if you imagine like all the problems that you might have when you have $1 million, when you're dead broke and you've got no money in your bank account whatsoever, it's
Mm-hmm.
probably not a very thoughtful, like it's the best use of your brain thinking about a problem that might never come around. So
Mm-hmm.
just stay in the present. And honestly, sometimes it is waking up, getting out of bed. It is that simple. As someone who's been, depressed, I've been suicidal twice. Sometimes just getting out of bed, brushing your teeth, getting out of the house. When the pageant started, when the pandemic started, I didn't leave the house for 3 months. When I got in the car, I was like, this is weird. I don't remember how to drive. And then I went to the supermarket. It's like, wow, this is such an adventure. I get to walk outside again. Sometimes just getting out of the house, putting a smile on your face, giving someone a phone call. It's like, what can I do now? Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't fret about yesterday. It's just like, what can I do now? And I think that, as you pointed out, I think that's really, really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was amazing. I definitely think there were so many little nuggets of value and truth in this conversation that we just now had. And so I thank you so much for being on. And if anybody who's watching or listening would like to contact Adrian further, you can find him on Instagram. It's at the Pageant Project. So definitely check him out. Check out his Instagram. Check out his podcast because it's amazing. You can find it on YouTube and anywhere. I like to watch it on YouTube though. So yeah, definitely check him out. If there's any last things that you'd like to say before we wrap it up.
No, because if I start talking again, it's going to be another 10 minutes.
Oh,
So thank you so much for having me on. And I guess all I hope and wish for is that this finds one person and it helps one person. If it
yeah.
does that, then I'll be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Same. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And for everyone watching, I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please comment, like, subscribe. And if you're not, find me on Instagram and send me a DM. Let me know what you thought. Alrighty. Have a great day, everyone who's watching. Good night or good morning, because, if you're in Australia, it's a different time of day.
Yeah.
But alrighty. Thank you guys so much for watching my very first episode.